the Cellar. Get up close here. It's been an interesting week. May have found some interest in worth pursuing in a role-playing teaching aid that I developed a long time ago that I think is still worth looking into, and I'm hoping they do too. I've had a couple of very good receptions and recommendations. It's a reactive, I learned that at this symposium a couple of weeks ago. It's a reactive role-playing game, and I think it'll be cool. And because everything's been in turmoil all week, I decided that I would answer and address comments in reverse order, meaning the newest ones I'll talk about and work my way up to the oldest ones, just, something different. All right. Oh, and this first one, I'm going to give you an honest answer. What is the most memorable character you have played in the last decade? Great-grandpa. And if you're fortunate enough to have grandkids or even great-grandkids, as I am, you'll know what a role that is, what a character you become. On those Sundays when we all gather together at our house for the big family get-together and dinner, I am Grandpa. I try to be much more accommodating and not let the kids wailing and carrying on and whatever get at me, and answer all questions as they're thrown at me. And it's a role that I spent all my life preparing for. And it's the best. Have 7 of them now. 7 great-grands. And that's the character, that's certainly the most memorable character. And I'm still playing him. I'm still Grandpa. And I got two little bitty new ones now of that 7. One's a year and one's about 6 weeks. So, characters, I didn't play a lot of characters. I was mostly behind the screen throughout my career. But that's definitely a character that I'm proudest of and was glad to assume. I was sad to hear that you're curtailing your attendance at RPG conventions, understandable though the move is. For some reason, this news prompts me to ask you about your experiences with amusement parks. I'll tell you what, some of the people that are regular contributors, and you that are know who each other is, have got some of the... I'm often wonder if this is what an insect in one of those little tiny things that they put them in to look at them underneath the microscope. They're crawling around, and the guy up there looking down at him. Ooh, there's his sexual organs. Ooh, there's his third leg. People must be. I'm getting paranoid. People are preparing to write a book. Question: do you like to go on the rides at these parks? I used to. For far too long, you couldn't keep me off a go-kart at a go-kart track, especially the outdoor ones. Loved it. Did roller coasters when I was a younger man. I'm way too old for that stuff now. I just rattle and slosh too easily to do a lot of that stuff. But would you do so in order to entertain your grands and great-grands? The only entertainment they get is watching Grandpa walk around in a circle throwing up. I don't consider that good family entertainment. I'd be certain I take, when we go places where there are rides, we make sure they get to ride them, and if they need Grandma or Grandpa to, go on hold them onto the horse on the merry-go-round, we do that kind of stuff. But Jesus, 76 years old? No, Got to remember, in the Navy, I rode the rail. I did the ejection seat ride up the rail. And believe me, that's all the thrill you'll ever need. Instant G's. They say our inner ear loses fluidity as we age, such that we feel nausea. Yeah, we certainly do feel it more as we age. But no, I don't agree that getting back on the horse, as it were, you reach a certain age where that doesn't work anymore. You get on the horse and you get sick and you barf or spin around in circles again. Getting back on the horse is about overcoming fears, not overcoming the treacherous behavior of your inner ears. What's my history with amusement park rides? Love them, hate them? Well, again, when I was a younger man, I loved them. Best one was, the most favorite one I ever rode was the Beast at Kings Island. It was a gigantic all-wooden coaster that rattled and vibrated, and it was amazing. Worst ever, way too many cheap carnivals. Question, new topic. If you're laying out a core rule book today, what guiding principles would you use to shape the format? I would shape the format in the order that I felt the person using it needed to address to accomplish what they wanted to do, and that would be to play the game. Or also create a scenario at the very minimum, or begin to do a world. So what would that entail? Well, there's a real easy question you can start with if you're going to build a world, or even design a scenario, because there are some things you have to abstract about the world outside the scenario. And a real good one is, how much does an egg cost? Go real basic in your economy. Real basic. A bowl of stew. A jug of lukewarm donkey piss ale. So, I would start with, okay, here's the world, the framework within which you want to build. Then I would guide them through deciding whether they want high fantasy, low fantasy, dungeon crawls. And only then, after all that had been decided, would I get into character generation and statting out monsters or whatever. I know. I want to get to the good stuff. I want to see the monsters. I want to see the art. Well, the art I would use would be more explanatory, illustrating perhaps with art a concept that was being discussed on the page. The eye candy should be in the back of the book with the magic and the monsters and what have you. Only occasional eye candy in the front, or smaller bits and pieces of eye candy in the front, just to keep the trail fresh and make them want to follow. Then I would, at that point, after you've generated characters and taken your monsters and that, now you got to think about the philosophy, which you also should have been thinking at the beginning also. And that is this going to be cutthroat? Are you here to have fun? Is it brutal? Is it beatable with common sense and brains? And only when you get all those things addressed in your own, straight in your own head, can you give it to anybody else to play in? My take on it. Okay, now you want to go on a bit of a rant. I got back into reading core rule books lately, and I'm frustrated by their tendency to bury the lead. My chief beef is the divorce between core mechanical details and a visual explanation, i.e., reference to the character sheet. This is a wasted opportunity. I say, show us the character sheet like an exploded view in a user's manual with lines between each feature. Okay, I see. Okay, just don't say just go see it. Here it is. This is how you use it. Because if for no other reason than pride, if you're going to design a new system, you want your sheet to convey the information it needs to convey, but in a much a new, fresh fashion. All right. Now, more rant. Many rulebooks follow this formula. Intro flavor denoting the setting. Brief. What is this explanation of RPGs? Short rundown of departments in the book. Features of the mechanics, what stats are, how they are used, which is all to the good. However, from there they tend to brush over character creation basics, for example, roll 3d6 for each stat, consult table, blah, and then leap into races, classes, equipment, spells without first introducing the reader to the character sheet. Usually, I can see that you have a hang-up for the character sheet. I'm not sure how you feel about it exactly, but I can see that the character sheets are of great interest to you. Now, character sheets have evolved from a piece of notebook paper that we wrote crap down on because there were no character sheets. All right, they've evolved from a piece of note paper, whether it's graph paper, whatever, and now they're full of eye candy. I know. I fell victim to that myself. About 15 years ago, I developed a set of what they were going to be was powerful NPCs, possibly for hire, whatever. It was an idea I had, so I created a bunch of them, and I wrote big backstories on all of them. So, it was going to be a package. And I created a full-color, eye-popping stat sheet for each of these characters because I was using them when I was running some of the high-level adventures that I was running back then. And I admit now that they're a complete distraction if you're trying to teach somebody how to play the game. Now, I have seen this countless times at the tables that I'm playing and running at cons when I hand these out, and some of them just go, wow, and they appreciate the art, and some of them get lost in it, and that's bad. It's too much to take in with a character sheet. So character sheets are a mix between those 2 points, though I have taken to using those highfalutin characters again when I'm running Lost Adventures, because you better be that good. And they're all they all have stuff. And in the old first edition, there was a lot of stuff available. We're going to talk more about that in another comment a little later. So these guys aren't dripping with stuff, but they're all well equipped, something you would expect adventurers to have reached this level in old school to have picked up along the way, because it's been a while getting there. Anyway, one of the many reasons that so many of the books out now, I don't have, I don't even get into their core mechanics to find out about them, because I'm so discouraged by the poor structure and presentation. Shadow Dark is nicely laid out and presented in a nice logical fashion. So is Mahakitl. Special points to Mahakitl, because they're introducing you into something that, except for oddballs like myself and other people that are interested in that period of time at that geographical area, are completely new to. But it does such a good job of explanation that it just eases you right in. Okay, final thoughts from this ranter. I may have to cut him off for a couple of weeks. I'm sure that there's at least one rule book out there that already does this. The nature of the hobby being what it is, good ideas abound, not all of them stick. Cogent point. I think that the art and image use in a core rule book should not simply be to present beautiful, if not distracting, artwork in support of the flavor fictional setting, but also to use the techniques of visual instruction, storytelling from user manuals, comics, integrated into the text to convey the sometimes dense information. If the information is that dense, it needs to be redone. My opinion. Any update on the D&D group at the library? Just retired myself and wondering if this is something I could transplant to Iowa. Been gaming for 40 plus years, so not sure my sensibilities align with the young folks, so to speak, but I can freeform a game at the drop of a hat for fun and enjoyment. Hey, doesn't matter. I don't care if they're orcs from 40 years ago or orcs from today. Orcs is orcs is orcs. Don't sell yourself short. And to answer your first question, you'll be seeing this on sometime around the 12th or the 13th. I think. Today's Thursday. You'll be seeing it Saturday. Pardon me while I consult my calendar. You'll be seeing it on the 12th. All right. The group's first get-together is the 17th. That's a Thursday. I do these videos on Thursday, so I can guarantee you a report on how it went or didn't go or whatever. I think you should get to know. I don't know how big a town you live in Iowa. I grew up across the river from Iowa in the Quad Cities. So I don't know what kind of library facilities you have available to you. But go to the librarians first, particularly if you've established, they know who you are when you walk in the door, or at least you're familiar with your face. Go to the library and talk to them about reaching out to the schools. Small town, it might be easier to do that. I can't say. But try to enlist the support of the library by pitching the idea of having it there. And if they have the space, most librarians are glad to have it used, especially with a demographic they might not get in there otherwise or as often. Go to them get their support, then approach the school, your school district, your local school, again, not knowing what size of city, town, or village in Iowa you are, but you get the drift. And get their support, get their interest, pitch them on all the things that role-playing does. You know, it discovers leaders, it forges friendships, it broadens horizons, plus all the fun. That would be my suggestion. Work through your if you have a branch, again, if big city, you've got a branch, go to your branch manager. Go to whichever librarian you would normally talk sci-fi or fantasy with if you did talk to your librarian. It's a place to start. All right. A quote from last week, I guess. It's not about beating the DM. Thank you. 1,000 times thank you, good sir. On the regular, I will have gamers with certain attitude who will sit at my table and tell me that it's your world, I'm just surviving in it. And the DM is gunning for a TPK. And it makes my blood pressure spike. I've gone hoarse telling this type of player that my job as DM is to facilitate fun for everyone. I'm there to help them tell their own stories in D&D. Sometimes characters die. Sometimes it's not the player's fault. They zigged when they should have zagged. They blew a saving throw. The DM's dice rolled way above the curve. It's not malice on my part. Because adversarial dungeon mastering isn't fun for me, has never been fun, and I've been behind the DM screen for 44 years, as of this summer. So again, thank you for giving us a clip that we can point those DMs there to kill our character players at. Because if Tim Kask is telling you all to lighten up and have fun, maybe you ought to listen. Maybe he's got a point. And I believe this generated a couple of replies. It's hard sometimes when the rolls are all going against you and everything. It's hard not to think that I'm out to get you or whatever, but I'm really not. I'm there to create a story. I'm there to edit a story that my players are creating. Like soliciting a story, they were given guidelines so they could understand. And now they're writing the story and I'm editing it. I'm not writing it. All right. What else? I don't want to get waxed too philosophical tonight. Sometimes if you get consistent whiners and carpers, maybe they're not a good fit. If you've tried to make them into a better gamer and they're not buying it, then maybe. Let me expand on the magic item thing I brought up last week and was talked about. Yes, 1E had a lot more magic items, but also had several classes that weren't magical at all. 5E has every class magical. It moved the magic to core classes from the treasure. I think this was a mistake because while 1E had more magic items, you as the DM controlled that based on your table's preferences. In 5E, everyone was magic. The choice to have low magic was restricted greatly. And it's a good point. It was a good point. Unless you were a cleric or a magic user, you didn't dabble much. You didn't handle a lot of stuff. Now, you could possess something that had been magically ensorcelled in some way or another. But you couldn't do anything. If it broke, you were screwed. If you used it up, you were screwed. So yeah, there was more stuff around because the players couldn't do squat. You know, they could carry an enchanted weapon, wear enchanted armor, wear an enchanted amulet around their neck. But now you're born with half the things that half the benefits those would have given you. So it's a good point. Have you seen the Tomb of Gizengax? I'm glad Uraj was there, as many advertised characters seem not to make the cut. The town itself doesn't seem particularly well developed. Not like Hamlet, anyway. What are your thoughts? Well, since you brought it up. No, I've not seen anything. I've not even seen the module. I have seen a large print that I was sent of my character. And I kind of like it. It's AI, but I still kind of like it. I've not seen anything else. Nothing. So I can't answer. I was supposed to receive all of it, but somehow didn't get it. The subject of the rules lawyer came up in this video. That's the thing I dislike most about the typical current RPG systems. The more you try to codify every possible situation that could occur while adventuring with highly complex and detailed rules, the more you encourage the players who's going to try to manipulate the rules as written to their own advantage. I much prefer RPGs that try to provide general guidelines and concepts rather than highly specific rules for every possible situation. As do I, and that's the way I run my games. And at cons, when we sit at the table, I tell them, my playstyle is stuck somewhere between original D&D and first edition. It's my world, welcome to it. Let's have fun. I mean, it can be fun even when you're in the midst of a campaign, in the midst of a crawl, and the tension's high because you're being stalked. That's fun. Now that one drew a couple of responses. If you're the DM, you have final say over any and all rules. It's that simple. Yes, it is. And Gary and Dave, and then Gary and Dave and me, every time we published the supplements, we kept saying that these are not graven in stone. They are guidelines. You know, the thing is, okay, say you and I play a little different. And one of your players comes to my table and they don't appreciate the difference. Okay. It's not like they paid anything to sit down at my table. My player goes to your table. Doesn't care for this or that or whatever. No harm done. Didn't pay to get there. You didn't lose anything. You got a new experience that'll probably hone and refine your own gaming. I firmly believe that every session does that. All right. It's just a question of group harmony. When I had a group that I was using to play test several things at the friendly local game store many years ago, there were a couple that didn't fit. They were 3 or 3.5 players, and they just did not fit. They were friendly, sort of, and all, but didn't fit. And there were a couple of players that couldn't commit to being there every time, every session. And one had a half-ass reason, the other one had no good reason. Anyway, it if it had gone on longer than this summer or year, whatever, I took playtesting several adventures, it would have honed itself down. The 2, 3, or 3, 5 players they would have, we would have parted ways amicably. The ones that couldn't commit to being there as frequently as possible would have been left on the wayside one day. Sometimes, you're reluctant to part ways with a player in your group because how are you going to replace them? Well, there's people out there wanting to play in your area, probably in your town, in your neighborhood. I was astonished just recently when I contacted someone at a educational publishing company, and they turned it all around on me and said how delighted they were to be speaking, and told me about what great fans of Dragon they had been, or how they played D&D. It's all how you make up your group. And sometimes at a con, I'll get a group that are really coherent right from the get-go. And the next group, 4 hours later, they're all elbows and thumbs, and spend 45 minutes of the 4 hours getting out of town, when actually they needed to get out of their own way. All right. I got Top Secret in the early 80s. Loved it. No one else around me seemed to care. But I did make up adventures, created dozens, maybe hundreds of characters, different weapons, etc. This is a type of fun of sorts. You're right, it is. But it's not really playing an RPG. Correct again. I think the crunchiest rule systems attract rules lawyers trying to imagine up the most OP character combination, probably by people who don't play much because crunch and rules lawyering sucks at the table. I'm not sure the OP, but I understand the general. I don't understand the words, but I understand the general point. Well, we started. We started our own rules lawyers, and even if we hadn't started them, somebody else would have. Get a chance. Pick up a copy of Knights at the Dinner Table. Especially get one of the compendium types, like the Bundles of Trouble or Bag World Tales or one of those, and you will see the rules lawyer Stevel. He'll try to bend everything he can to his, but when he gets called on it, all right, he'll play it the right way, grudgingly, but he'll look for a way to get even. I do not have anything against the profession of lawyers in real world. Necessary. The good ones are needed to keep things smooth and working well. Rules lawyers, on the other hand, are like defense attorneys. They look for every single nook and cranny in the code to use on the behalf of their clients. That's what good defense attorneys do. Speaking of which, if you aren't watching The Lincoln Lawyer on Prime, you ought to be. It's a really good series. Anyway, that's what defense attorneys do. They pour through every precedent, they research whatever, and find every point they can to defend their client. But if that defense attorney were to turn to playing D&D, he'd probably be tossed out of the group after a couple of instances of that rules lawyering. Because the rules are not graven. They've not been stamped in cuneiform. They're just there to help you get an idea what to do and have a good time. And on that note, I think I'll say do-da-da-govi. I don't know why my tongue's so dry tonight. It got sips. Do-da-da-govi.
Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.